And if you do take the time to look at the Kickstarter campaign, there are certain levels of donations. There's a tape being offered, there's signed books being offered, there's shouts out in the book offered. So thank you to all the donors of this campaign. We appreciate you. We couldn't do it without you. And Tommy's book, there's a lot of books being put out right now, or in the recent past, and I tell you what, they don't hold a candle to this book. If you want to know the inside stories of death row by someone who was there from early onset until the very end, Tommy's book is what you want to read. And with us right now is Tommy D. How you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Looks like we got some people on here, and after a quick little Q&A between me and you, if you would, we're going to take some questions from the audience.
Looking forward to it.
All right. We're going to go ahead and start it out. The book, Stranded on Death Row with Dr. Dre. I'm sorry, the book, Stranded on Death Row with Tupac, Snoop, and Dr. Dre. That's what we're crowdfunding here right now. Tommy, what prompted you to write this book, and why now?
Actually, started writing it about 5 years ago. I found myself I'd be at a party or in the studio, and I'd be telling death row stories, and I kept hearing over and over, "You should write a book. You should write a book." And then I thought one day, what the heck, I should write a book. So I started it with Ben about 4 or 5 years ago. We got it halfway done, and my father passed away. So I decided to split Iowa because I retired, moved back, and I came back to LA to get back in the music business. And so we wanted to have it out by the time of the movie, but we didn't have it completely the way we wanted to, but it's almost there.
This is a Jmix exclusive.
Everything happened fast.
Is there there's been a lot of speculation and rumor. Was there a real beef between Pac and Snoop? Was there a tension there?
No, there was. When people talk about tension with the artists at Death Row and Tupac, the only tension was sort of that here along came, Tupac gets out of prison. He does a double album in 30 days and it releases and bam. So Tupac was questioning, am I carrying Death Row or what? How come all these other people haven't put out records? I thought it was the artist's fault because Dre really wasn't there to help them because he was still figuring out his position with Death Row financially and he's trying to decide his aftermath position. But then what I just found out about 6 months ago from Trey Lane, who was one of the security guards at Death Row, Suge was stockpiling all these recordings because he was going to move over to Sony with Death Row and have all these albums ready to go. So that was something I just learned about 6 months ago, which we have to put in the book as well. Because a lot of people say, oh, the artists were jealous about Tupac. But I'd be jealous about Tupac if I was an artist because the guy was just blew everybody away. But no, there wasn't a problem with Snoop and Tupac.
Mixmaster King asked, are you still engineering, Tommy? And who played most talkbox sessions, if there were any you experienced with at Death Row?
Yeah, I'm still engineering. That's a good question about the talkbox, though, because when we did California Love, Dre said to me, can you go down to K&M and see what kind of talkbox it is the Quick uses? And I'm like, okay. And it was the Electro Harmonics talkbox. So we looked around in LA in the stores. At that time, the internet wasn't very popular yet. And we couldn't find it. So I called my brother in New York and I said, can you see if you can find an Electro Harmonics talkbox? And he found one. So we FedExed it to Dre's house. And everybody's sitting around with the tube trying to do the talkbox thing. And nobody could make it happen. And then Butch Small says, I got Roger Troutman's number. Let's just call him. So they called Roger Troutman. That's him actually doing that on California Love. There wasn't really a lot of talkbox stuff at Death Row. If it was, maybe Quick and maybe just here and there, not that much. I mean, when you say there wasn't that much talkbox stuff, but you hear California Love so many times, you probably assume that it was used a lot at Death Row. But that's a good question.
One of my favorite artists from Death Row is Tupac. So I guess my question to you would be, how did you first meet Tupac?
After Dre had left Death Row, the next day I switched back to Can-Am and they put me with Tupac. And so he came in to record. about a half hour into the session, they laid the beat down. And I've told this story a lot. I can tell by the smile on your face. You've heard it. Tupac, I went out to the kitchen. Tupac was looking for me, very upset, wanted to know why I had left the studio, if I ever left the studio again. He was going to beat me up. The Outlaws had their box cutters in their mouth, but fortunately they didn't come out. And the session ended about 4 hours into it. Johnny J says, hey, Tupac, Tommy D has to take a shit. Everybody laughed. Then everybody left. Then the next day he comes in with Timothy Roth. They're doing voiceovers for the gang-related movie. And Tupac's sitting back there, and he keeps going, winking at me. Hey, you're glad to stay in a Tupac session, aren't you? And I said, no, I'd rather be doing records. And he said, okay, for now you're my engineer. And I said, okay, cool. Shook hands. Then that night we had the session, and the Outlaws were really confused because they couldn't figure out why he and I were getting along so good. It was kind of funny.
Bobby has a question, and shout out to him. He's a backer of the project as well. Do you know why they used a sound-alike of Snoop's for the All About You video?
Yeah, is this the... Yeah, because he said, why they used the dude that sounded like Snoop than the real Snoop. And they had a guy, after Tupac passed away, they had the Realist came in. If you're familiar with the Realist, who sounds pretty much like Tupac. I'm recording the Realist. I'm like, this guy has the same tattoos. This guy sounds exactly like Pac. What is this? Then another guy comes in the next day named Top Dog, and he's doing these Snoop Dogg songs. Didn't make any sense to me. I really can't answer this question. I guess it was just since Suge felt that Snoop wasn't faithful to Death Row when he was leaving, they got another sound-alike, just like they did Tupac. I always wondered how fans took that, especially the Realists.
I've been told that people at the label didn't take it very well. I've been told the story of Lady of Rage not really liking the Realist. Did you ever experience people giving some negative feedback of them having sound-alikes being at Death Row?
Well, when it all happened so fast, like I said, with Tupac passed away, and we were doing some sessions, and I kind of had a falling out with Death Row. I told him if I didn't get a bunch of money, I was out of there, and so I just kind of split. And so I didn't really get to experience what the other artists had to say about the Realist. But I do remember we worked on Rage's album for like 3 years. And it was disappointing when her record did come out. It didn't sell very many copies, and because she had gone through so many songs and so many producers. And I felt that if Dre would have produced it, if it would have come out 4 months after Afro Puffs, not only would have been the bomb, but it probably would have sold a couple million.
You're speaking about, you're falling out with Death Row. Do you think that Tupac was going to leave Death Row to start Machiavelli Records?
Yeah, he was going to. He was telling all of us that he was. Now, I was also told by Roy, who was Suge's assistant here just about 3 weeks ago, that on the Machiavelli album, I believe there's no label that says Machiavelli Records, is there?
It says Death Row Records / Machiavelli Records, but it's the only album you see it on. Tupac had written that it was going to be solely on Machiavelli Records in the track listings before.
Yeah, and they took the emblem off, I think, the emblem that he had made for Machiavelli Records. And one thing that confuses me, if Tupac were to be killed, have been killed because of leaving Death Row, he still would have been loyal to Death Row. He still would have done things with Death Row. He wouldn't have just like turned his back and left. And so.
Bobby asks, Pac was a big Prince fan. He did sample a lot of Prince in his songs. Did he ever ask you, because you worked with Prince, anything about Prince?
I never mentioned anything to him about it. Things were happening so fast on a Tupac session. We never really sat around and talked. But it was QD3 that sampled a lot of the Prince. That was QD3 that did that. But I think, did Johnny J sample much Prince?
I believe so. I believe there's a couple tracks that he did sample Prince.
I think QD3 had like 5 or 6 tracks that he had sampled of Prince. So, but we never really talked, I never really talked to Tupac on a like a social level about stuff like that. It was mostly just things that were happening in the studio.